The Tom Woods Show, episode 1998.
Prepare to set fire to the index card of allowable opinion. Your daily dose of liberty education starts here. The Tom Woods Show.
Hey folks, it does not matter where we are in the school year, it is never too late to join the self-taught Ron Paul curriculum, which will give your kids an unfair advantage and which features 400 videos on history taught by me. And if you do decide to join the curriculum, of course join through my link, because through my link only will you get $160 worth of free bonuses. So check out my link, ronpaulhomeschool.com. Hey everybody, Tom Woods here. I'm delighted to be joined today by Jim Ostrowski, who is not a stranger to the Tom Woods Show, but it's been a while since we've spoken. And we're going to talk in particular about his new work, The Libertarian Devil's Dictionary, which must have been fun to do. I'll just put it that way. We're going to go through some entries, let's say, in this dictionary, give you a bit of a flavor of what you can expect. But Jim, it has been a while since I've had you on, so I'd like to reintroduce you to the audience. I know you're a lawyer and you have that great book on progressivism, but introduce yourself to the folks.
Sure. Buffalo, New York. Dad was a judge, so I ended up going to law school. But very early on, I joined the Liberty Movement, got to know Murray Rothbard and pretty much everybody else. Went to his 10-part seminar in history of economic thought. So been a libertarian before I was a lawyer. My law practice has tried to advance, a number of libertarian things. But Hank Holzer, old-time libertarian lawyer, he told me a long time ago, you can't just make money off of libertarian litigation. So sort of a mainstream litigator, trials and appeals. Recently done some work in the ivermectin COVID arena, which I know your listeners would be interested in, but sort of trying to slow down my practice and write more books and do more political activism in the liberty movement arena.
Well, great work all around, and it was very nice to see you at the 2000th episode event. If you hadn't been there, it would have been only 2,499 people. So
that was amazing, outstanding. Amy and I had a tremendous fun time, and it was a great venue too.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. So what's the origin of this Libertarian Devil's Dictionary?
Well, keep in mind, I'm a lawyer. So, one of my sort of quotes is, litigation is war with words and paper. So I'm obviously obsessed with words, but I'm also, and my father was a judge as well, but I'm also a philosophy major. So again, it's like every field I've ever been in is obsessed with the meaning of words. And when I got into the movement, you absorb the whole lesson that really a lot of what's going on out there is a big lie. And how do people lie? They lie with words. So early on in the movement, I've been concerned about, how can we use language to assist the cause of liberty? Obviously, the bad guys are sort of lying with language all the time. And so for many decades, I've been trying to figure out, well, how can we sort of redefine words in a manner that is objectively true, but also maybe funny, but also provides a contrast with the way that our opponents use words. And so it's a long-term project. I just sat down a couple months ago and I came up with this idea. I guess I've had the idea for some time, but I finally pulled the trigger on it. And, Ambrose Bierce, if the audience is not familiar, he did the Devil's Dictionary, which is a hysterical 19th century work on kind of like what words really mean with a lot of humor in it. And hopefully some of that humor's rubbed off. So I just started the project and it blossomed and it was fun to do. And I'm going to keep revising it and get suggestions from other people in the movement and probably republish it every year. But it's on Kindle now. It'll be on paperback on Amazon. So my basic pitch is politics is a battle of the dictionary. And they have a better dictionary than we do, so we have to bulk up our dictionary. That's the basic concept.
Well, not to mention, they're constantly twisting the meaning of words so that they either mean the opposite of what they originally meant, or they have some unrecognizable definition, and we're all expected to conform to this.
Sure.
So this is a kind of pushback, too. Now, I want to start with a couple that I like, and then I want to give you a chance to share some of your favorites to generate discussion here. But
sure.
The letter C actually was where I first really stopped. Because before I think Constitution is great, but before we get to that, shortly before that, we have the word consent. Now, the ruling class has a definition of consent that I just talked about in episode 1995. That was the the conversation I had with Jeff Deist at the Mises Institute Supporters Summit, and it briefly came up that you have in the dictionary a quotation from Lysander Spooner.
Right.
The only idea they have ever manifested as to what a government of consent is this, that it is one to which everybody must consent or be shot. And that's what they think of as consent. Now, I was giving the example, and probably I've stolen this from somebody. I don't know where. But if I buy a house, which I did not that long ago, if I buy a house, we have a whole special day called closing day. Right. And that day consists of a full hour of signing things. And at the end of it, you have a house. But it's an hour of signing things. Right. And all that entitles you to is a house. But meanwhile, when it comes to the state, well, they can pretty much, as we've seen, especially over the past year, they can do anything to you they want. They can do anything to you or your livelihood that they want. And they'll say you consented to it, even though you signed nothing. You have done nothing but protest it your entire existence. And they say that you've implicitly consented to it. Can you talk to me about how you, especially as a lawyer, how you make sense of that?
Well, it is a big lie. It really goes to the heart of everything. And I addressed it in Progressivism, which you and I had a chat on. And it gets into the concept of the social contract. It's also in the dictionary. But basically, the only thing we can do is, as Murray would say, de-bamboozle people and say, look, there is no contract. There never was a contract. So the issue really becomes, well, there's an implied contract. Now, Randy Barnett, who's a law professor, he did a lot of the work on this that I quoted in Progressivism because I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. But he basically said, look, there's no implied consent. He went through the various arguments. And the bottom line argument on consent is that if there's no way not to consent, it's not consent. So and any of their arguments is, as you've already stated, there's no way not to consent. So just, for example, elections. So if you vote and your guy wins, you can't complain, right? Obviously. If you vote and your guy loses, you can't complain because you participated in the game. Now, if you don't vote, you can't complain because you could have voted. So this is how it goes. It's all just propaganda. It's all nonsense on stilts. I think Jeremy Bentham said that, but let's steal that for our side. Yeah, it's nonsense on stilts. And I think one of the things I'm trying to do in the book is just take a definition, but also, as you suggested, every definition, some of the definitions in there are actually, you could write an essay on it, but, trying to keep it short. But yeah, we just have to steal back the language, have our own better dictionary, explain to people, no, there's no, just go through, there's no shortcuts. We have to go through the argumentation that it's in progressivism that you've already indicated. So there's no shortcut. We just have to explain why people have been, bamboozled.
Later on in the S's, of course, you also do have social contract separately, but I figured we could cover that under this entry of consent. So then a couple of entries later, we have Constitution. So let me read what you've got here. A written document which purports to limit government power, but which in the end means only what the government itself says it means, and which is unenforceable by the people except by waging civil war. Now that is a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. And I think for some people who've been listening to me for only a short time, that will seem shocking and scandalizing. But especially now, I think you should now accelerate your movement to, I don't want to say the fringes, because I think we're actually the mainstream normal people, but to our way of thinking, it ought to have been accelerated by now, because if there was ever any demonstration of the truth of that, we've just lived through it. But let me just play devil's advocate with you for a minute.
Sure.
Still, I think we could say that the mystique of the Constitution, at least something like the First Amendment, which is probably the only one of the amendments, or maybe two that most people can name, but that First Amendment has such cultural purchase, let's say, on the American public's mind, that I think it's not because there's any enforcement of the Constitution going on, because nobody enforces the Constitution except the government itself, and why would they do that? But there is nevertheless this mystique that in America you can say what you want and publish what you want. I think there are governments that have, because they don't have that cultural inheritance from their constitutions, they have been able to get away with more abuse than our own government has, at least up to now. Do you think there's anything to that?
Absolutely. And, for the constitutionalists out there whom we've offended, you have to draw a distinction. There's many good and great ideas in the Constitution, and I would say most of the great ideas are in the Bill of Rights, which is obviously libertarian in spirit and in origin. What I'm trying to say is that the process of constitutionalism is flawed because although there's great ideas in the Constitution, in order to enforce it, you have to go to the very entity that you claim is violating the Constitution. And that's where the rub is. And then ultimately, it's going to be government judges who decide what the Constitution means. Now, you made a good example on the First Amendment. In the Second Amendment, too. So the First and Second Amendments, I think, are very important because they're pretty easy to understand. Now, you talk about habeas corpus and bills of attainder and this stuff, even for lawyers, it's hard to understand. So one of the reasons I think that the Second Amendment has, to a certain extent, been actually recognized and enforced by the Supreme Court is because most people think it means you have a right to bear arms. That's the plain language. So the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, I think, because they are generally understood, are kind of a check on the government. But generally speaking, when you get into the beyond those two obvious ones, my whole theory of the Constitution, it's in progressivism. They basically enforce the things that if they didn't enforce, they would lose a lot of their credibility and public support. So in everything else, as Hank Coulter was my law professor, he was Ayn Rand's lawyer in the 60s. He wrote a book, Sweet Land of Liberty. And he basically went chapter by chapter and all the obscure clauses like the gold clause, the contract clause. Basically, the government ultimately rules in favor of the state. So constitutionalism, in my view, is a fallacy. It's a procedural fallacy. It doesn't mean the ideas are bad. It means we need a better way to enforce these rights.
I used to make an analogy like this back when I was promoting my book Nullification. I would say, suppose we're having a dispute, you and I decide that the person who's going to settle that dispute is my mother. Now, you would say she has an interest in the outcome of the case here. And I would say, but my mother's very fair-minded. And there have been 2 or 3 times in the past 100 cases where she's ruled against me, because she's trying to be a sport. So it's not to say that the government will never, ever, those government judges will never, ever rule against the state. That does happen. That's been known to happen. But the point is nobody in the abstract would agree to a setup like this, where the very party you're having the dispute with is paying the salaries of the people who are going to decide who's right.
Exactly. And no one would sign that. I use a similar example in progressivism. Nobody's going to sign a contract in which, let's say, you put a roof on your house. And if there's a dispute, the roofer resolves the entire dispute, including whether there's a violation of the contract at all. And that's what the Constitution is, except that we never signed it, which is another huge problem.
Yeah, that's a small problem.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not just, knocking down the Constitution. What I'm saying is we have to figure out other ways to advance our movement because that's not the way to advance it.
I love the Mencken-esque definition of democracy. A government run by the manipulators of the majority who bother to vote. So
yeah, it's a short one, but that's basically, and I've been in politics up in New York, judges are elected except for the highest court in the state. So, I grew up in elections. I've been involved in it. I've been involved in almost every party. When the Libertarians went into the Republican Party, I tried that, obviously supported, Ron Paul. So if people actually knew how democracy worked, they wouldn't be so thrilled with the concept. No, it's just run by political machines, special interest groups. Nobody donates money to politicians except people who are expecting a huge payoff. I've read the reports and everything, and I've written about this over the years. So it was fun sort of, settling scores in the book with some of our opponents.
Well, you can get a sense of how the regime really feels about quote-unquote democracy when you look at how it responds when countries around the world vote in democratically people the U.S. regime doesn't like. Suddenly that's not democracy. Or if Donald Trump is elected president, that's not democracy. And if Trump gets reelected, this will undermine democracy. This is like crazy double talk. Like, I don't even agree with their system to start with, but this is crazy double talk. You either accept the outcomes of the system all the time or you don't. And it's so funny how they go from, if Hillary Clinton had been elected, they would have said, the wisdom of the American people and our democratic system wisely avoided this terrible outcome. But then just a small number of votes change, and it's, oh my gosh, it's the American people have been, the Russians are involved, or the people have been misled, or they're all racists, or whatever. I just have to ignore them. I mean, honestly, you have to try to ignore them. What do you think we should talk about? That I just picked 3. Do you have a couple favorites? Because I had plenty.
Well, of course, I wrote the book, but just so the reader knows, some of this is original with me after 40 years of thinking about these things. I've tried to take the best quotes from the movement as well. And some of the quotes I hope are funny, but some of them are actually just sort of fairly serious definitions of important terms. But I have a few favorites. Can I define the Democratic Party?
Please.
My ex-party when I was a kid. Democratic Party, a party run by millionaires, doing the bidding of billionaires, but pretending to speak for the poor and the working class, and whose policies keep the poor and the working class generation after generation.
Yeah. That really is it. And that reminds me of something. I guess it was Morgan Reynolds. Remember, he was a labor economist under Bush, and he was at Texas A&M, and he's retired now, I think. But years ago, I mean, this probably was like 2004, I gave a talk on Catholic social teaching from an Austrian economics point of view at the Mises Institute as one of their named lectures. And after it was over, he said, look, I don't believe that this is a matter of the bishops, just don't understand economics. That is the one explanation I will not accept. Yeah. That at some point it has to be they know full well what they're doing. I mean, these people may say and do stupid things, but they're not stupid people. So they have to know that what they're doing is actually causing these people to stay in their vulnerable position. And he says, so that they can be exploited by people like these bishops. And this is exactly how they want people. And of course, that's how the state wants people. They want them to be in abject destitution. Well, not necessarily abject destitution, but reliance on the state is the position they want people in.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm not sure I'm quite so cynical as to buy into Morgan's analysis there, at least when it comes to the bishops, but I can understand why somebody would think that. I absolutely do understand why somebody could think that. My response to that is, if even the economists don't really get economics these days, I think we can cut a little slack to bishops who don't spend much time thinking about it. I mean, we have economists now who honestly think we don't have to worry about demand curves anymore when it comes to labor and stuff like that. Right. We've got lots of problems with the discipline itself. So, if some guy who's thought about it for 5 minutes isn't very good on it either, well, I could be a little bit more understanding.
No, absolutely. But I think the problem with the church is they take too much darn government money, and who's I think it was it Ambrose Bierce? I can't remember who said it, but whose bread I ate, his song I must sing. I may be misquoting Bierce, but it's just in fairness. Can I do the Republican Party?
Yeah, why not? Let's hear it.
Because I wanted let's be equal up to. So this is how I define. And again, I was in the Republican Party. I'm now a registered Libertarian. I'm do some legal work for the New York State Libertarians, but I was in the Republican Party trying to move it in the Libertarian direction for quite some time. So I kind of know what I'm talking about. So here's how I define the Republican Party. A grifting operation that gets votes, donations, jobs, and contracts by promising to make government smaller without ever doing so while in office.
Yeah, well, I mean, what else is it? I mean, I think we've seen this over and over and over again. And again, the vast majority of people during this last year who are let's say the vast majority of governors were not really good. The Republican governors, by and large, were not very good. They more or less went along with all the craziness. Ohio, is that Governor DeWine? Is he actually Republican?
Yeah, actually, my son goes to John Carroll in Cleveland, so I've been following it pretty closely. It's been pretty bad there. It's been bad in most states. You've already pointed out the governor in Florida has done a good job, and some of the other states as well. But no, I don't know what his problem is up there. But again, the Republicans, they run on smaller government, and then it's like you say, whoever you vote for, you get John McCain.
Yeah. I'm afraid that's the case. I'm afraid. Can you imagine John McCain overseeing this? Is there any chance that he would have been even slightly laissez-faire? Would have been like the military would have been in the streets keeping you in your house. No, finally, he gets to use the military for something.
He'd be thrilled. Can I just do a shout out? I don't know if you knew Marshall Fritz.
I met him once, yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a book about government schools are bad for your kids. He's the one and he's the only individual mentioned in the book. I'll probably add some more people as I revise it, but he's the one I got the term government school from. And that term is actually, and I wrote a book about it, read by a few people, but that term is actually, I think, gotten around. And I wanted to give him credit for that, because why not call it what it is? It's a government school.
Yeah, so and also because the word public has such friendly sounding connotations, and I don't want it to have those.
Right. No. Can I do government school, Mr. Woods?
You do anything you like, my friend.
So, government school, a daytime juvenile detention and babysitting center for kids 5 through 18, where they're taught to love the state by members of Democratic teachers unions who receive full-time pay for part-time work.
Yeah.
So you can see why it's a lot of fun to write, and I'm gonna keep revising it, and hopefully I get suggestions from people, and I hope we'll have a really comprehensive thing, but also something that people, it's a quick read, it's a fun read, but when you're out there in political argument, maybe next time somebody talks about regulation, which I define as when the government mugs you when you're minding your own business, I think that a proper definition of words. And even when I'm trying to be funny, hopefully I'm being funny, but I believe it's an accurate definition. When I say the Democratic Party is what it was, that's based on my empirical observation of the party. It's in not making anything up. So you can disagree with it, but I think that's a fair way to look at the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as well.
Hey, folks, let's take a minute to thank our sponsor, Crowd Health. Everybody knows the American healthcare system is broken, although most people advocate more of what broke it in the first place. Meanwhile, a lot of people have been trying to navigate it with a low premium, high deductible kind of plan. But as you know, these days, that's turned into a high premium, high deductible plan. So you pay these huge premiums, and then you still have to pay thousands and thousands more dollars before your insurance kicks in. That's why I recommend Crowd Health. It isn't health insurance. It's a better way to pay medical expenses. Crowd Health is a community of people who are tired of paying for this broken system. You can get a simple, flexible, and affordable way to pay for your health care. Being in the Crowd Health community can save you hundreds of dollars monthly and put thousands of dollars back into your pocket. Using their app, find nearly any doctor in the country ranked from 1-star to 5-star. Scan bills and throw them away. Crowd Health takes it from there. You're part of a community of health-conscious members who want to get and stay healthy in return for lower prices. It gets rid of the insurance middleman, passes the savings on to its members. Crowd Health is able to offer amazing prices because of its community of health-conscious members. But they have an amazing offer just for my listeners. Get your first 6 months for just $99 per month. That's a savings of almost 50% versus their standard pricing and a lot less than one of those crappy high-deductible plans. Just go to joincrowdhealth.com/99 and enter code WOODS at sign-up. That's joincrowdhealth.com/99, promo code WOODS. Crowd Health is not health insurance. It's a community-powered alternative. Terms and conditions may apply. Let's do a couple more here. I'm going to pick one now.
Sure.
Now, by the way, on the school question, let me just say that I realize, again, for people listening who might still be just getting their feet wet on this, that it's pretty tough medicine to speak this way about so-called public schools. I understand that this is like a religious institution for a lot of people.
Oh, I know.
And they attribute so much wondrous good to it. And it's very, very hard to look at it objectively, because then also not only have we been taught to love it and we build our little micro civic patriotisms around it because the kids play in sports and we cheer for them and all that.
Right.
I understand why people feel that way, but we have to look at the actual nature of it and the results. I mean, the way I put it, if Walmart ran the schools and got results like this, we would never, ever hear the end of it, that Walmart's just propagandizing the kids into being Walmart consumers. And it's also doing a terrible job getting them to be critical thinkers or to be able to read or write or whatever. They're just doing a terrible job with a lot of these critical things. We can't possibly allow this system to persist. But when exactly the same outcome occurs under this system, they just say, well, if we just get more, it's because you stupid rubes won't give us enough money. So what that they're spending $20,000 a year per student, that's never enough. So at some point you have to say the thing is a catastrophe. And you would have alternatives. I've done multiple episodes of the show on what you would do in the absence of government schools. But there's no way it would be worse than the current system. So it's so funny. People say, oh, well, what would the people in the inner city do? How would they? Okay, well, right now, what do they get? Are they getting an education that's worth anything? I mean, how many people graduate from those schools and remember one scientific fact? None.
Well, I did a lot of criminal defense work. I mean, they had a section in the Buffalo City Court, I kid you not, which is basically the school section for students. And it was one after another that went in there. So I got the sort of end product of the failure of inner city public schools. So I don't take a backseat to anybody and saying these are failed institutions. And in my book on government schools, I talked about examples throughout history and currently where, single moms were able to homeschool, and there's programs around the world that allow even people in poor nations to pool their resources and so on. And obviously, you've done a lot of good work on homeschooling curriculum, as has Dr. Paul.
All right, let's do this one. I mean, again, I know we could do an episode on it, so let's instead just make a few snarky remarks and move on. And that is equality, which you've got some good quotations from several people as part of your definition, but the fundamental part of it is a euphemism for the envy of leftists of their betters. And it may even be beyond leftists, because some of it is, I think it is nonpartisan. Because, yes, it's true that in the public policy sphere, we do see this. But I'm talking about the ordinary course of your life. You have a successful life. And your Republican neighbor might not be any happier about that than your Democrat neighbor, just because human nature being what it is. My thinking on this is that I think it's a completely poisonous concept. The only sense in which we should think that it has a place in our discussion would be in a functional sense, that functionally we're equal and that nobody should be able to lord it over everybody else. And we should think about it the same way the Jacksonians in the 1830s thought about equal rights, which was not equal rights means that that workers should get extra money from their employers at the point of a gun. Nothing like that. Yeah. It meant nobody has the right to exploit anybody else. I mean, that we are equally deprived of the ability to use the state to get special privileges. We have that equality. We are equally deprived of that illegitimate means of acquiring wealth. That I'll accept. Now, there are many injustices in the world that ought to be fixed, but they're not injustices because the sacred God of equality is being violated. Right. They're injustices because justice is being violated. And the response is not to make everybody quote unquote equal, because that involves multiple injustices in itself. Yeah, no, it's really an insidious concept. And I think, again, I wrote about that in Progressivism, but even equality of equal protection under the laws, I mean, that's in theory a good concept. It was kind of wiped out during the New Deal, unless it involved race. But equality is just one of these terms that tends to seep into the liberty movement, and kind of people tend to forget we're the liberty movement, not the equality movement. And so it's really important to understand that this can be a very insidious concept, except in very restricted contexts like equal protection of the laws. Yeah, and I guess equal protection of the law, I can see that. I should have acknowledged that. But I'm thinking about Robert Nozick, who had the example of Wilt Chamberlain. So let's say everybody wants to go watch Wilt Chamberlain play basketball. So we all spend, let's say, $25 to get in. But let's say before the game, we're all equal in income and wealth. But then Wilt Chamberlain plays a basketball game and a whole lot of people give him $25. Now suddenly there's radical inequality. Right. Now there's been no coercion. Everybody wanted to give him the $25, but equality has been violated. So now what does that mean? That at the end of the game, Wilt Chamberlain has to give everybody the $25 back? I mean, how can you run a society like this? Yes. Every time you act, even if you start from a position of equality, every time you act, there's now a whole new nexus of relationships and levels of wealth and so on and on. So you could never actually reach this goal. It's impossible to reach. And that's exactly why the state loves it. It loves things that can't be reached because it means they can get their hand in it forever and also at the same time have the joy of being self-righteous about it. And they open up, it means they open up offices and departments to bring about an outcome that can't possibly be brought about. At the Mises Institute event, somebody put up a graphic from the University of Michigan showing that there are 80, as in 80, full-time diversity bureaucrats at that university, full-time, 80.
Oh my God.
So diversity in this area, diversity in that area, diversity in that area. So, and again, that's also aimed at some kind of strange kind of equality. I mean, just let people do what they want. Maybe people don't want to do, some people don't want to do some things and other people want to do others. Just let them do what they want. Instead of badgering women all the time, you have to be engineers. Maybe they don't want to be engineers. Did anybody bother to consider that possibility?
Yep.
No, because equality has brainwashed us into thinking that everybody thinks exactly the same way. And if women aren't engineers, it's because they've been misled about it, or they've been propagandized against it or something. But that's a grift. I mean, you want to talk about a grift? Yep. 80 full-time jobs trying to bring about. So do you think there's going to come a day when they're going to say, we don't need these offices anymore? That'll never happen. See what I mean? It never goes away. They love it.
Yeah, that was an excellent example by Nozick, and I read that in college. In fact, that may have been how I discovered Rothbard in the footnotes. But let me date myself for you, Tom. I did watch Wilt Chamberlain play basketball.
Oh, how about that? I bet you he didn't give you your money back when it was over.
He did not. And I stood on the court. In those days, we weren't all security, paranoid people. I was able to stand on the court with him after the game and see what a amazing talent the guy was. But great example by Nozick.
Yeah. I just love that. All right. Let's wrap up. Do you want to?
Sure.
You can wrap up either with some final words or with one more term.
Let me see if I have all these darn Post-its. How about mainstream media? I think we can both agree that that's a worthy opponent of ours. So, it's a term thrown around. I thought I would try to just, not particularly funny, but just to try to say exactly what I think it is. Mainstream media, the long established and large media that mainly serves as a propaganda vehicle for the power elite, which emits virtually no actual journalism. They march in lockstep, regurgitate each other's stories, and are part of the revolving door with big government.
Well, I see nothing to object to there. that is what it is. And now these days, Michael Malice has kind of popularized the term corporate press.
Sure.
My only objection to that term is that there's nothing wrong with the corporate form. So I don't like that's used as a term of abuse. There's nothing wrong. The problem with the media is not that it isn't socialist enough. That's not the problem with it. But on the other hand, that is such a demonizing term, and it cuts them to the quick, I think. I can kind of look the other way, in the use of it.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, it's a fun book. I think it'll help you maybe win some arguments at the corner tavern, and maybe even in your classes, and just maybe get people rethinking how they've been kind of manipulated by words, as George Orwell kind of warned us about a long time ago.
Well, I will be linking to the Libertarian Devil's Dictionary at tomwoods.com/1998. We are a mere 2 episodes away from releasing the final version of the 2000th. So I don't know what I'm going to do that week, Jim, by the way, because the final version is going to be like 3.5 hours. I
know.
Do I not release any other episodes that week? I don't even know, because who's going to have the time to get to them? I don't know. Maybe I take a vacation that week.
It was awesome. I missed the 1000th, so I said, darn it, I'm going to get down to the 2000s, and we figured out how to do it. So it was awesome. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Tom, for having me on.
It's my pleasure. It was great to see you, and thanks so much for your time today. Okay, everybody. Tomorrow, our friend Patrick Newman is going to return to the show. He's an economics professor at Florida Southern College. He has a brand new book called Cronyism, Liberty versus Power in America, 1607 to 1849. He is telling the story of cronyism. Now, we know some crony stories from this day and age, for sure, but a lot of the stories from the past are kind of buried and hidden. You have to really dig them up. And Patrick is an expert digger. He has dug up some great stories and facts that are just not taught in your history class. So we're going to be covering that tomorrow. And then, the 2000th episode will be released. So let me tell you something about the 2000th episode. It is strongly advised that you watch rather than listen to the 2000th episode. Now, all my YouTube listeners, who I love you guys, but I rag on you a little bit. Now you're all saying, oh, look who's come crawling back. It's old Woods here. And now he wants video. Well, yes, indeed, because some of the 2000th episode just won't make any sense audio only, or won't be as much fun. I don't even exactly know how I'm going to handle it, because Doc Dixon, the magician, is just too funny not to include. But there will be bits, of course, that you'll be missing out on without the video. So try to watch the video, and you'll be able to get the video. It'll be up at, and of course, this page is not live yet as I record this. But if you go to tomwoods.com/2000, which will be the show notes page for that episode, I will have the video, a link to the video posted there. So watch it. And it's a long episode. So this is going to be I'm only going to release 3 episodes this week, 1998, 99, and 2000. It's a long episode, but it is so fun and funny. You're going to want to consume the whole thing. And so that will cover the rest of the week without a doubt. I should also, let's see, I try and remember to say this at the time, but in case I don't, there is a little rough language in it. So just be aware of that. Not from Old Woods here, but from his friends. And there's even a little bit of risque humor at the very, very end. I'll leave you to guess which of the people appearing, would be telling jokes like that. But anyway, that's what you need to know. So make sure you go out of your way to watch rather than listen. All right, that's it for today, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Become a smarter libertarian in just 30 minutes a day. Visit tomwoods.com to subscribe to the show for free, and we'll see you next time.
Like the sound of The Tom Woods Show? My audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.